Story time about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. That's when she came out of the bathroom in her bra and a pair of shorts. Mind you, we have a bunch of our friends over having dinner at my place. I get up from the table and I ask her what's up. That's when she says that it's way too hot in my apartment and that I needed to turn down the temperature. I told her I'd give her a t-shirt if she wanted to and she said no. I'm comfortable in my body and I don't care if people look at me. When I look around, I see everyone staring at her. Obviously, all the guys are like oogling her goodies, but all the girls that are there with their guys are instantly upset. That's when my boyfriend bursts out laughing and says, "What's wrong with her?" She just starts laughing maniacally at what my boyfriend said. Then she goes and sits down next to my boyfriend and starts joking with him. You might be thinking I'm so stupid for this, but I decided to let it go. Oh yeah, she's also the type of person that never wants to go home. That's when I had to be honest with her and I told her that she was making everyone uncomfortable. And I asked her to leave, which she did. A few days later, she comes over to my place so that we can get ready to go out. My boyfriend was gonna go out with his friends and I was gonna go out with her. 2 seconds after she comes into my apartment, she walks out of the bathroom completely naked. And my boyfriend's just sitting there on the couch watching her. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. That's when she comes out completely naked. You could see everything. Boobs, butt, and V. And my boyfriend is sitting on the couch. As she comes out of the bathroom, his jaw drops to the floor. Then she says to me, "Oh my god, I couldn't find a towel, sorry." She walks straight into the guest bedroom where she has her clothes. My boyfriend and I look at each other and I'm completely disgusted. He, on the other hand, thought it was hilarious, so he starts laughing. Then she comes out of the guest bedroom in panties and a bra. I mean, I guess at least she wasn't naked this time. That's when I tell her, "Do you need help getting dressed or something?" She says, "Oh no girl, I'm just thirsty, I'm gonna get something to drink." So I said to her, "I'll get you something to drink, you can go get dressed." At this point, I had it. But guess what? This wasn't the last time. A few weeks later, I wanted to go to her place to get ready this time. But then she insisted on coming over to mine instead. That's when I got the feeling that she had done all of that to get my boyfriend's attention. And I straight up told her, "Are you just walking around naked at my place just because you want my boyfriend to see you?" Of course, she denied it. She says he's cute, but he's not that cute. What? Part 4 is up. Story time about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's on Instagram. At this point, she had been naked in front of my boyfriend twice, but it wasn't the last time. She came over to pick me up one time and I told her to wait for me downstairs. Well, instead of waiting for me downstairs, she decided to come up to my apartment. While I was in the bedroom changing, my boyfriend let her in. That's when she comes straight into my bedroom without even knocking and says, "Hey girl, do you have a dress I can wear?" The dress she was wearing was absolutely perfect. I asked her why and she said that she didn't feel sexy enough. Without even me saying yes, she started raiding my closet. Then she pulls out a very expensive dress I had not even put on yet. My boyfriend was standing in the doorway just watching the whole thing go down. I look at my boyfriend and he just rolls his eyes at me. Then out of nowhere, she takes off her dress and she's completely naked underneath. He looks at my boyfriend and says, "Oh, sorry, I didn't see there." My boyfriend turned around and walked away. I finally closed the door and confronted her about it. She told me that I'm a prude and that I needed to relax. I kicked her out and we haven't spoken since. She's been begging to talk to me and hang out. My boyfriend told me that if I felt uncomfortable around her, then for her not to come over. But he says that he's fine with her. His reaction also upset me too. What should I do?
Story time about how my aunt drugged me. So a little background information, I was 16 and in 10th grade. And I had never met my aunt before, but whenever my parents talked about her, it was only bad things. Well, the one day I went to go and ask my mom something and I heard her on the phone with someone. She was like, "No, I'm not giving you any more money. It's not my fault if you spent it all on drugs." And we barely talked about my aunt, so I didn't know that's who she was talking to. Fast forward, I come home from school the one day and my dad's sitting on the porch with this woman who looks like she's homeless. My dad introduces her. He's like, "Oh, by the way, this is your aunt." He was like, "Oh, well, she wants to spend some time with you, so you're gonna go with her for a few hours." I was hesitant because of all of the stuff that my mom had told me about her, but I started walking down to her car and my mom whips in the driveway. Eventually, my aunt ends up talking my mom into letting me see her, and apparently my aunt has been asking to see me for a very long time. So she takes me to the mall, we eat, we get our nails done, and at this point, I'm thinking she's kind of normal until she takes me to her house. Like for part 2. Part 2 about my aunt who drugged me. So like I said, she ended up talking my mom into letting me go with her, which I was super grossed out because she smelled really bad and her car was a mess, but she took me to the mall. I thought she was normal. And then she took me to her house. When we got into the neighborhood, I kind of recognized it because my grandma lived in the same neighborhood. But anyways, we pull up and it is literally trashed. Like there's fucking garbage all outside of the house. And I walked inside thinking that it would be better. No, it was filthy. There were needles everywhere. You could definitely tell that druggies lived there. And they had weird pictures hanging up all over the walls of these girls, random girls. Like when I asked who they were like, "Oh, I don't know." So then her boyfriend's walking around the house. He's like 40 years old, walking around in his boxers around me. So I call my mom, I go outside and I'm waiting for her. And my aunt comes out and she's like, "Do you want a glass of water?" She gave me some water and it tasted really sour and I had chugged the whole thing. And that was the last thing I remember before I woke up on her couch in the morning. Like for part 3. Part 3 about my aunt who drugged me. So like I said, I was sitting outside on the stairs waiting for my mom, and she comes over to me and asks me if I want a drink, and I'm like, sure. So I chugged the water and it tasted sour. Woke up in the morning on her couch. And when I woke up, my aunt was in the middle of doing drugs. And some random lady who I don't even know how she got there, she asked me if I wanted a cigarette or if I wanted any of the drugs. So I got up, I was like, no, I don't do drugs. And I ran out of the house, and I was like super dizzy when I got up. So I ate shit on the way out of the house. I ran outside, I ran into this lady, I asked her to use her phone. I told her a little bit of what happened. After, I ran towards my grandma's house, and my mom came and picked me up, and I got grounded for 3 months because my aunt drugged me and my mom let me go with my aunt.
Should I break up with my boyfriend for fat shaming me? My boyfriend and I started dating 2 years ago. At the beginning of our relationship, I was weighing 130 pounds. So back then, he never had a problem with my weight. In fact, he used to praise me and tell me that he loved my body. He always would tell me that my curves were sexy, and I would sometimes tell him that I wanted to lose weight, but he would always say no. In fact, a few months after we started dating, I went on a diet. I lost about 5 pounds in 2 weeks, and he told me that I needed to stop. He told me he liked my womanly body. So I stopped dieting. At first, I was happy that he loved my body so much, but at the same time, I didn't feel healthy, which is why I started the diet in the first place. After I stopped the diet, I still kept on eating healthy, with the exception that every now and then we would have pizza or fast food. But I still tried to keep it to a minimum. So my boyfriend is actually in the Marines, and he had to go away for a few months. This sent me into a depression because I missed him so much. And because of that, I started eating a lot. I would ask my mom to cook me my favorite meals, and I would basically just eat all day. At the time, I also didn't have a job, so that was making me depressed as well. So I ended up gaining 40 pounds. Part 2 is up. Should I break up with my boyfriend for fat shaming me? After he told me I looked disgusting, I instantly broke out into tears. That's when he said, "What did you expect?" Then he said, "I've been away for months. The last thing I want to come home to is a huge gut." But then I started crying more, and he kind of softened up. He said that we could work out together and that he could help me lose the weight. He then pulls up his phone and shows me a picture of what he thinks I should look like. It was basically some random Instagram model that he followed, who was actually way skinnier than I was when he first met me. For the next week, he barely touched me, and he would make little snide remarks every time he saw me eating. For example, one night we decided to watch a movie at my place. I asked him if he wanted any snacks, and he said no. Then I told him I was probably gonna make some popcorn and if he wanted any. That's when he said I needed to watch what I was eating, especially at night, and that the last thing I needed was snacks during a movie. This obviously hurt my feelings. And of course, I started dieting again. But this time I was even more strict about it. I basically cut out every single thing that I like to eat, and I was only eating lean meats and salad, but very little portions. One night he invited his friends to come over to watch a football game. Instead of me having to cook, I offered to order them pizza, and they said yes. When the pizzas finally arrived, my boyfriend said in front of everybody, "You don't get to eat any pizza because you still need to lose weight." I was so horrified, mortified, I wanted to literally crawl under a rock and die. His friends started laughing because they actually thought it was a joke. Then he says, "No, you guys, I'm serious. She's so fat." I couldn't believe my boyfriend was putting me down like that in front of his friends. I gave him the silent treatment, but he really didn't care. After a full month, I started finally losing weight. It's been 3 months now, and I'm weighing 120 pounds. Now he's all over me and constantly tells me that I look beautiful. But I'm never gonna forget how he treated me when I was heavier. I know that I should break up with him because of how he treated me, but I really do love him. And he's back to normal now. He loves me and touches me all the time. What should I do? Should I break up with my boyfriend for fat shaming me? While he was in the Marines, I ended up gaining 40 pounds. I was super depressed and I didn't have a job and I missed him so much. One day he calls me and tells me that he's gonna be home in 2 weeks. And that's when I knew I needed to start dieting again. But then part of me remembered that my boyfriend liked me when I was thicker and curvier. So what I did was I cut down on all the fried foods, but I still kept eating a lot during the day, which basically helped me maintain the weight instead of just losing weight. In preparation for his coming home, I went to get my hair done, my nails done. I even got a facial and I went to get wax down there, which of course is super painful. I even went to pick up some lingerie because nothing fit me at the time. I also cleaned my entire apartment and cooked him a really nice meal. To tell you, I even called his mother to ask her for the recipes. I was so excited to see him. He finally shows up to my house and I have everything ready. But as soon as he sees me, he asks me what happened. I said, "What do you mean?" Then all he said was, "You're fat." At first I laughed because I thought he was joking. Then he says, "What's so funny?" It's like he was instantly angry. I told him I gained some weight and that I didn't bother losing it because he liked me curvy. That's when he said, "Yeah, I like you curvy, not fat." Then he told me I looked disgusting. Part 2 is up.
Story time about how my sister was hooking up with my boyfriend. Little background information, I was 15 and in 10th grade, and I have never had a boyfriend before. Any guy that I was sort of talking to, we never made it out of the talking stage. But fast forward, I met this one guy who we're gonna call Jake, and because of how tragic my love life was, I didn't expect us to get into a relationship, but he ended up asking me to be his girlfriend. So of course I said yes. I was super excited that I had a boyfriend, and then he met my family. And my older sister and I were like super close, so I told her all about him, and she just couldn't wait to meet him. Real quick, I just want to give a big shout out to Lumino for sponsoring today's video. Lumino Whitening Kit is one of the best ways to whiten your teeth without paying hundreds of dollars, especially if you have sensitive teeth. This is the next best thing. Although I have veneers, they only cover the front of my teeth, so my teeth can still be very sensitive to certain chemicals that other brands use in their products. If you guys want to go check out their 7-pack for under $15, the link is in my bio. So whenever he met my sister, she was being super talkative to him, and I thought it was just because she was excited to meet him, like for part 2. Part 2 about how I found out my sister was hooking up with my boyfriend. So like I said, he came over, he met my sister, they got along super well. Fast forward, my parents decided to have a family gathering, and my sister was like begging me to invite my boyfriend, which I didn't plan on inviting him at all because my family is super annoying and would make a big deal about the fact that this is my first boyfriend. She was like, okay, but if you guys are seriously in a relationship, I think that he should meet your family. So I ended up inviting him. So my mom called me to the kitchen to help pass out drinks, which was super annoying because my sister was literally doing fucking nothing. So after I'm done with that, I'm looking for my boyfriend and he's nowhere to be found. So I go upstairs, and as I'm about to walk up the stairs, both of them come down. And when I asked what was wrong, like why they were upstairs together, she was like, oh, I was showing him to the bathroom, which I felt super weird about, but because she was my sister, I let it go because you're supposed to trust your family. Stuff started. Part 3 about how my sister got with my boyfriend. So things started to get really sus because every time that he would come over, they would always find a way to be alone with each other. So fast forward, my sister and I are supposed to go to one of her friends' parties. The whole time though, she kept asking me if I would invite my boyfriend. And no offense, I love my boyfriend, but I need space away from him sometimes. And not to mention, I felt like I was dragging him around like a dog because she was the one who would want me to invite him everywhere. Fast forward, I end up inviting him to the party. My sister gets super drunk, really sick, and my boyfriend offers to take her to the bathroom. And I was like, excuse me, I'm her sister. I can do that. Thank you very much. So after I say that, my sister looks at me and she was like, I would appreciate it if you would just stop being like this because I feel super sick right now. Like, okay, play the victim. Anyway, so I go to check on them in the bathroom. They're not in there. And one of the bedroom doors was open, so when I went in there, I saw them doing the nasty. I asked her how long this had been going on, and she said it was since the first time that they met. And now I'm ignoring my sister until she goes to college.
Storytime about how my boyfriend faked his own death so that he wouldn't have to break up with me. His mom called me to tell me that he was dead. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I had been dating for 3 years. Our relationship was really only based on attraction, I have to admit. But the last year, we started getting a little bit more serious, and that's when we started talking about marriage. By the way, he was the one that brought up marriage. He asked me if I could see myself getting married to him, and I said yes. Now, here's the thing. I am way out of his league. Like, way, way, way out of his league. I'm a 10. He's probably like a 6. Here's my theory. If you date a guy that's not as good looking as you, he probably won't cheat on you and will consider himself lucky to be with you. So that was my reason for being in a relationship with him. He made me feel safe, and I knew that he probably wouldn't cheat on me, and he felt lucky to be with me because I'm really hot. Eventually, he asked me to move in, and I said yes. But after a few weeks, he started acting really strange. He constantly complained about having headaches, and for some reason would always have his mom over at our place. Part 2 is up. Storytime about how my boyfriend faked his own death so that he wouldn't have to break up with me and got his mom to tell me that he was dead. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. After she told me on the phone that my boyfriend was dead, I had no choice but to believe her. I was so sad and depressed, sitting in the apartment that I share with my dead boyfriend. I called my parents and told them I was coming home. I spent the next 4 days with my parents and eventually went back to my apartment. My plan was to get all of his stuff and give it to his mom. I show up to her house with the boxes and knock on the door. She opens the door with a huge smile on her face, and as soon as she realizes it's me, she stops smiling. I asked her if she was okay, and she said that everything was fine. She asked me what I wanted in a really rude tone, and I said, I'm just bringing some of your son's stuff. She asked me to leave it outside and then close the door. I knocked on the door again, and she did not open the door. A few days later, I go to the mall, and guess who I see walking around? My dead boyfriend? I run up to him and ask him what happened. That's when he confessed that he just didn't know how to break up with me, and he thought that the best way to do it was just to pretend that he was dead. And he also confessed that he met someone. Here I'm thinking I'm way too hot for him to cheat on me. Yeah, right. It's been a few months now and he's hitting me up again because he broke up with the other girl. Should I take him back?
Story time about how I almost got kidnapped at a grocery store. So a little background information, I was 16 and it was during the summertime. And I was super excited because I had just got my license. But my parents had this idea that if they made me drive around and do all their errands, that I would be a better driver. So I was pretty much like their bitch. Anyway, so the one night my mom wanted to make this recipe that she saw on TikTok. And she didn't have the right seasonings for it. So who did she tell to go to the store? Yours truly, me. And on Sundays, the mini market that was in our town would close at 4 o'clock. So I had to drive like 30 minutes away to the nearest Target. And when I got there, I had to park in the back because they had like 10 handicap spaces up front, another 10 for when you sit there and they bring your shit out to you, and another 5 whenever you're picking something up that you already ordered. But in all honesty, that didn't bother me because I had never heard about any girls getting trafficked at a grocery store. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I almost got kidnapped at a grocery store. So like I said, I parked all the way in the back of the parking lot. I mean, okay, not all the way in the back, but I was damn near close. So I go in and I'm not too familiar with this Target. I've only been here a few times because the mini market in my hometown is usually the one that I go to. So I'm looking around and I realize that there's this little girl following me. But it seemed like she was more like keeping an eye on me. Like she would stand like 20 feet behind me, but just like stare at me, you know, peek through the aisles. And she did that for like 10 minutes. But whenever I finally went up to the checkout, she was gone. And this woman came up to me. She was like, "Oh my gosh, have you seen my daughter? She was running around the store. I don't know where she is." So I described the little girl to her that I saw. And she was like, "Yeah, that's her. I can't find her. Will you please help me look for her?" And I didn't have the time for this because my parents were going to wring my neck. But I said, part 3 about how I was almost kidnapped at a grocery store. So like I said, she asked me to help look for her daughter. And I was like, "I'm going to go tell a Target employee." And she was like, "No, don't worry. They're all already looking. They have security all over the place." And she was like, "Will you help me check the parking lot? Because I don't know if she left." She was like, "I've been having them look for the past 10 minutes. So I didn't think anything of this because I didn't think that some lady would try to kidnap me. So I went into the parking lot with her and I'm like, "Okay, where do you think she would have went? Like, did you drive here? Did she maybe go to the car?" And she was like, "No, we live like 5 minutes down the road. Do you think that we could get in your car and drive around?" And I said, "Yeah," because I thought that it would speed up the process. And my dad's truck was really high off the ground. So while we're walking, I'm like, "I think someone's under my car." And she was like, "What? No. It's probably just the shadow." And I'm like, "No, there's someone under my car." So I turn around to walk back into the store and she starts like pulling my arm towards my car. So an employee called the police whenever I went in there, and long story short, they were trying to kidnap me.
Story time about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I'm sending me on Instagram. I come from a really big family. My mom has 5 sisters and 1 brother, and my dad has 4 brothers and sisters. All of them have their own kids, so I have a lot of cousins. And this means we have a lot of family get-togethers. Every single weekend, someone is hosting a party. We all get together and eat, and it's actually a really nice time. But there's always that one creepy uncle. In my case, it's my mom's brother. He's 46-year-old and has never married, but he's a bachelor. He's got money, so he basically has a bunch of sugar babies. Whenever my family tells him that he needs to get married, he says he'll never get married to anybody. He thinks women only exist for the pleasure of men. When I turned 16, I noticed that he would stare at me a lot. At first, it was just staring. Every now and again, he never did anything really creepy then, but just the staring was enough for me. I never told my mom about it then, not until I turned 18. This is when he started making comments like, "Wow, you're growing into your body," or "Wow, you got great hips." He would make comments about how I was growing up, like, "Ew." He even told my dad that he needed to keep me away from guys because I was growing up really quickly. And because of my curves, men would think that I was a woman. This is when I finally told my mom that he was making me super uncomfortable. She thought it was funny at first, so I avoided him at all costs. Part 2. Story time about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. When I told my mom that he was making me super uncomfortable, she laughed it off. She thought it was funny. She said, "Oh, you know how he is." So from that point on, I basically avoided my uncle every time we were at a family event. When I turned 20, this is when things got even worse. He would ask me things like if I was a virgin, or if I had a boyfriend, if I had ever been on dates. And one time he even told me that he would get very jealous if I ended up bringing a guy to one of our family events. One time he complimented me on the dress that I was wearing, so after that, I only wore baggy clothes to family events. The fact that I had to change the way that I dress so that he could control himself makes me sick. I finally told my mom again that my uncle was always bothering me. That's when she told me that the world is filled with men like him, and that all I needed to do was just ignore him. So I told my dad everything. My dad took it a little more seriously and told my uncle that he needed to stop making comments. My uncle just laughed. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. I finally told my dad and he told my uncle to stop making comments. My uncle just laughed and told my dad that he was overreacting. And that all he said to me was that I was a pretty girl. What a liar. In part 1 and 2, I told you guys that it was getting worse, but here's where it actually gets even worse. Like I said, I have a really big family, so my cousins are growing up too. One of them just turned 13 and my uncle cannot stop staring at her. She's maturing a lot quicker than most 13-year-olds. He's already staring at her. So here's what I did. At the next family event, I sat right next to him. Every time he would stare at one of my cousins or try to make a comment at me, I called him out for it in front of everybody. I even recorded the things that he said. The fact that I even have to do this at a family event makes me sick. Instead of enjoying my time with my family, I have to sit next to my creepy uncle policing him. Anyway, it's totally worth it though. I'm making sure that my cousins don't feel uncomfortable. After I had enough recordings of him saying nasty things, at the next family event, I showed it to my grandma. I basically played it for the entire family. My grandma told him that he couldn't come to any more events if he was going to behave that way. And of course, he apologized to everyone right away. But not to me, he apologized to my dad. After his half-ass apology, he was let back into family events. I don't think that's enough punishment. Give me some ideas because I think I deserve justice. Creepy uncle.
Story time about how my grandma almost got me grounded. So a little background information, I was 14 and in 8th grade. And there was this boy that I really liked who lived like 10 minutes away from me. So the one night he asked me if I wanted to hang out. And my mom was strict about me not hanging out with people after 7 o'clock at night. Especially a boy. I wasn't even allowed to hang out with boys. And my grandma, my mom, and my brother and I all lived together. And we all had our own rooms. Mine was on the first floor of the house, so I snuck out the window and I went and hung out with him. So I snuck out at around 3 and came back at around 4 a.m. And my grandma comes into my room to wake me up for school. And I guess that I had been laying on my side and my hair was like pulled up. Because literally all I remember waking up to is her smacking me up out of my sleep and screaming at me because there was a hickey on my neck. She's like, I'm telling your mom whenever she gets home, your window's gonna be screwed shut. And I keep telling her it's not a hickey, so she calls my brother over. And he's like, yeah, that's definitely a hickey. Because he likes to kiss her ass. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my grandma almost got me grounded. So like I said, she's like, I'm telling your mom, and I keep telling her that it's not a hickey. And thankfully, my mom already went to work. She had work at 6 a.m. So I got on the bus, I go to school, and I'm talking to my friend and telling her about how I'm literally going to be crucified whenever I get home. And she told me about how her older sister was in like the same situation that I'm in now. So she texted her older sister asking what she did because she never got caught. And I was like, okay, well, if she used makeup, my mom's going to find out because she's not dumb. Well, apparently her older sister burnt herself with a curling iron. Yes, literally burnt herself, but she ended up getting away with it. So fast forward, I get home at around 3 o'clock and I sneak in through the back door so that way my grandma won't see that I came in the house because she literally would have made me sit in the living room until my mom got home. So I go upstairs and I burn myself with a curling iron, which is not fun. Like for part 3. Part 3 about how my grandma almost got me grounded. So like I said, I snuck in through the back door so that way my grandma wouldn't see me because if she saw me, she would have made me wait in the living room with her until my mom got home. So, burnt myself with the curling iron and my mom gets home. And since I'm on the first floor, I can literally hear my grandma talking to my mom and my brother, of course. My grandma's like, yeah, she has hickeys all over her neck. Which is literally an exaggeration because there was one small one. So my mom calls me out to the living room. I go out and she's like, all right, show it to me. And I'm like, show you what? She's like, don't play stupid. Your grandma already told me the whole situation. And I was like, Mom, I literally burnt myself with a curling iron. And my grandma's like screaming and freaking out because I'm lying. She's like, you better tell your mother the truth right now. Da 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 da. So I show the burn to my mom. She looks at my grandma and she's like, so you're gonna tell me that's not a burn on her neck? And she was like, that's not how it looked this morning, blah, blah, blah. So I got away with it, but now my grandma literally stalks me to see if I'm doing anything wrong so she can tell my mom. Is a $40 foundation better than a $9 foundation? The two foundations that we have going up against each other are the She Glam Complexion Pro and the Airbrush Flawless Foundation. This at least looks like it's $30. So on this side, I'm going to do the She Glam foundation, and on the other side, I'm going to do the Charlotte Tilbury foundation. First things first, both of these foundations claim to have a matte finish that lasts all day, and it is supposed to feel like nothing is on your face. Also, both of these are supposed to be full coverage, and that's good to put to the test today because I do have a few blemishes. I am in literal shock right now. This is a dupe for the Charlotte Tilbury foundation. $9, $40, no beauty filter. They both look and feel the exact same way. Run. Do not walk, run. And everybody can run because there are 30 shades. Like, I'm sorry, you will never catch me spending $40 on a foundation ever again.
Story time about how my asshole boyfriend criticizes everything I wear. Disclaimer's not my story time. My boyfriend and I have been dating for 6 months. We're both pretty young. I'm 19 and he's 22. I could say that he's just young and he doesn't know how to treat a woman yet, but he's pretty immature in everything else. Now you might wonder why I'm with him. It's because I love him. I met him when I was 15 in high school and I've been in love with him ever since. He always used to tell me that I was too young for him, but finally when I turned 18, he started paying attention to me. I begged him to go on a date with me and he finally said yes. At first, everything was so amazing. He was fun, charismatic, and super affectionate. When he finally asked me to be his girlfriend, I was so happy. But then slowly, he started criticizing everything I wear. He doesn't like when I wear hoodies or sweaters, leggings or pants, skirts that are too short, skirts that are too loose, or crop tops. First, he would politely say things, but now he's just straight up mean about it. He told me when I'm around him, I can wear skimpy clothes. But when we go out, he wants me to wear stuff that's loose. So I literally changed everything I wore. I dressed only for him and I started hating myself. Part 2 of how my boyfriend criticizes everything I wear. Disclaimers are not my story time. Send me on Instagram. I completely changed the way I dress just for him. He would always find something to criticize, even down to the jewelry or hair accessories or makeup that I wore. It got to the point where if I went shopping, I would send him pictures of the stuff that I wanted to buy for him to approve. Even my nails. Anytime I went to the nail salon, I would have to send him pictures of the nail polish or any designs I wanted to do. And don't think that he's paying for stuff. No, he's not. I finally opened up to my mom and told her everything. She told my dad and they both got really upset. My dad even called my boyfriend and told him to come over. My parents told him to stop being so controlling, otherwise the relationship would be over. Of course, my boyfriend pretended to be on his best behavior, apologized and said that he wouldn't do it anymore. But when we left my parents' house, he told me I was a snitch. Eddie made me promise to never tell my parents anything about our relationship again. And I know I should just break up with him, but I do love him. I've been in love with him for years and now that I'm with him, I don't want to lose him. But I know that I've put him up on a pedestal. It's been a few weeks since my parents intervened, but my boyfriend hasn't changed a thing. I decided to buy myself a designer purse that I've been wanting for years. As soon as he saw me with the purse, he said that my privilege was showing and that I needed to go return it as soon as possible because it was embarrassing. Part 3 is up.